I'm Josh Barrow, host of Left, Right, and Center, KCRW's weekly forum for civilized debate across the political spectrum. Today's news cycle demands more time for deeper analysis, so Left, Right, and Center is now a full hour every week. Subscribe and listen at kcrw.com/LRC.
On To The Point, we try to make sense of the policy debates and the political sideshows on the campaign trail.
Ted Cruz wrapping the bacon around the semi-automatic weapon to cook it.
I understand that trade is not a sexy issue.
Nobody knows where the Republican Party is going to land. I mean, it's kind of like a country road. No one knows where it will end.
In many ways, Marco Rubio is the Michael Jordan of American politics.
I'm Warren Olney. To The Point has you covered for the 2016 campaign. Find the To The Point podcast on KCRW's iTunes page.
From KCRW Santa Monica and KCRW.com, it's The Treatment. Welcome to The Treatment. I'm Elvis Mitchell. My guest happens to have done more, I think, interesting stuff than any actor I can think of. And what I think of as being his trademark is he is the most attentive listener in front of the camera I can think of. His name is Ray Liotta, who's worked with people from Martin Campbell and Martin Scorsese to Miss Piggy. He's starring in the new NBC series Shades of Blue. First of all, Ray, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I do think that's really interesting. I mean, the things that people talk about with you, nobody ever talks about the way you listen. And I've always thought that found it to be really interesting. You really project your attention into these characters you play, which I think makes them all seem so intense.
Yeah, no one's ever told me that, but yeah, I do. Especially with some of the actors. I've been fortunate enough to work with some of my idols, from Gene Hackman to Robert Duvall to De Niro, Pacino, Pesci. You don't know what's going to come out of their mouths, so you got to pay attention because they like to mess around with the lines sometimes, or just to play around. So if you're not listening, then you end up looking the fool for not paying attention.
But I just think when you play really empathetic characters, I'm thinking of Dominic and Eugene or Article 99, these are guys who are really invested in trying to sort of shape somebody's lives. That listening really comes into play in those roles, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it comes in play with everything in life, whether, kids or, I listen to my daughter and sometimes you listen to people that you don't want to listen to, but just out of respect, you listen to them. But yeah, it's kind of like what it is. I mean, they say sometimes the hardest thing. I remember acting teachers saying this about, to sit and to do nothing. It's really hard for a lot of actors to do nothing, to feel like they have to fidget with their hands or move something. I was watching somebody the other day, and it was just so obvious he could not sit still. He couldn't just sit and listen. His hands were moving. His hands would go into his pockets. It just wasn't. And then especially a lot of male actors, the hands go into the pockets or the arms get crossed, which everything is body language. Everything that you're saying, whether it's you're saying a lot by saying nothing, just the way your body moves and what position it's in says a lot.
And I think, because I so often I get the effect from you of you tend to lean in a little bit as somebody's talking to you, and that I think that also makes them react when you lean in a little bit.
That, and I also have bad ears.
Is that true?
Yeah, I do. I have tinnitus.
When did that happen?
About 5 years ago. And luckily, knock on wood, mine comes and goes. And it's never to the point where it gets in the way. I mean, I like to think I was listening before that, because I started out doing a soap opera, and we had great actors. You know who Kathleen Widows is?
Yeah.
She was my mother on the soap, and by far one of the best actresses I've ever worked with. And you never knew what was going to come out of her mouth. And because they were all really playful, they considered themselves stage actors. Paul Roush, the executive producer, he'd know there would be a part coming up. He'd go to see different plays, and he would go backstage if he found somebody who was right for the part that he wanted them to do. He would come back and say, I'll have you out whatever time. If you need to be out by 2 o'clock to get ready for an 8 o'clock curtain, you will be out at 2 o'clock. So he used these actors that were really into theater, really into the whole playing make believe. It was great, but I learned a lot from doing that.
I just think part of it, too, is that you listen so intently that there's this kind of presence that comes from that. And I just wondered if, as a kid, there were actors that you liked or you found yourself gravitating to who paid the same kind of attention to the other characters in the piece.
I never wanted to act. It all happened by mistake. It came time to go to college. I didn't want to go to college. Had no idea what I wanted to do. I was an average student. I walked out of my SATs. My dad said, look, I really want you to go for a year and take whatever you want. So I got into the University of Miami, and this was in 1973. And at that time, all you needed was a pulse to get in that school at that time. I went and I was just going to take liberal arts classes because, again, I had no idea what it was that I wanted to take. And I got up to the front of the line and they said, all right, well, you're going to have to take a math and a history. I says, I don't even want to be in college. I'm not going to take math and history. Right next to it was for the drama department. So I took a step over and said, I'll be a drama major because I had an elective my senior year of high school. And my best friend Gene and I, we took it and we did children's theater. And we just kind of messed around. I'm not proud of it, but I had no direction in terms of what I wanted to do. My dad had a chain of automotive stores, and he wanted me to take that over. But I hated the smell of rubber and the tires, and everything about it was just not what I wanted to do. So anyhow, so I said I'll be a drama major, and it's a typical actor's story. There was this really cute girl. She says, you auditioning for the play tonight? I said, no. And she berated me. How could you? It's all about doing the plays. You got to do the play and blah, blah, blah. So I went and auditioned for the play.
Which was?
It was Cabaret. And the year before, they did a production of it, and the leads were all juniors and sophomores, so they moved up and were now seniors and juniors. So, the main Sally Bowles and I forgot the other characters' names in the show. That was all set, but some people had graduated. So the first thing I got was I was a dancing waiter in Cabaret. And the first thing you had to do for your audition was you had to tell a sad story. So I told a sad story about this dog, Lucky. I had this Dalmatian who was just a nervous little wreck. And I lived behind a golf course and some woods. So I figured I'll just let him off the leash, because usually we had to walk him because he was a maniac and would go. I was on the phone with Bobby Zimbardo because I was in a band in 6th grade. And our song, I think we said, just walk away, Renee. I forgot the name of the group that sang. I remember that was the one song that we knew. I let Lucky go out, and all of a sudden I hear crash and yelping and yelping. See, sad story. The dog got hit by a car. And you're making a funny face, kind of, if you can see him. It's a sad, funny face. It's almost like an oh my gosh. But yeah, so there was a sad story, so I got called back. Then you had to come in, you had to sing and dance.
What did you sing?
I'm a jock from New Jersey. That's all.
You could do Walk Away Renee, obviously.
No, I could do that. No, what I saw was the original production of Pippin with Ben Vereen, and I sang Magic to Do. And so Val, the girl, she found the sheet music, and she found that the cast album, and why I wasn't embarrassed by the whole thing, I have no idea. But she helped me, and I'm singing along with the cast album and looking at the words because I got the sheet music. I go in for the singing audition now. And Dennis, the piano player, I handed him the sheet music, and then I took it away. He said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I have to sing this." He says, "What do you think? I memorize all these songs? I don't know how to play. I don't know this music. Just get up there and sing." I said, "I didn't know you had to have it memorized." I knew nothing from anything about playing pretend. So I got up there. All I could remember was the refrain, "We got magic to do." I kept singing, "We got magic to do." And they said, "Now you're supposed to be dancing." And now there's the other actors, the other freshmen, they're all watching the auditions. And I don't know if you remember, I don't know if you remember a group, Freddie and the Dreamers.
You did the
Remember
Freddie?
that? And I did the Freddie. And I was
the white man's dance, we call it where we're from.
I did the Freddie, and I was doing the Freddie, just doing the refrain, "We got magic to do, we got magic to do." And I got in. And their first year, all I did were musicals. But there was an acting teacher there named Robert. His nickname was Buckets Lowry, and they called him Buckets because he used to play basketball. That's why I played basketball and soccer. So it was somebody that I could relate to, because I couldn't relate to anybody in the theater department. You know, a lot of these kids been doing it since they were in kindergarten, boys and girls, that this was just something that they've always wanted to do. Well, Buckets was a guy's guy, and because I was a guy's guy, I want to say he took me under his wing, but he definitely helped me through it, and luckily he really knew what he was talking about. And then I started getting the leads from sophomore on. And it's like anything. When you get a certain amount of attention, people like what you're doing. It just makes you feel good about yourself and what you're doing. And said, all right, well, I'll go another year and then another year. And I ended up, graduating, went for 4 years. Third day I was in New York. I landed a commercial. Within a week, I had an agent. Within a week after that, I had a manager. And within a month, I was screen testing for things. There was a show that Robert Zemeckis did. It was called Beatles Forever, and I think they ended up changing it to I Want to Hold Your Hand.
That was the movie, yeah. I Want to Hold Your Hand. Nancy Allen's in that movie, yeah.
And I didn't get it, but I was screen testing. I was living in New York because I'm from New Jersey. So from Florida, the University of Miami, I went to New York. I ended up in New York because that's what I knew. I didn't know L.A. at all. And so for money, though, I was bartending for the Schubert organization. So every night I was watching these Broadway plays. When Bob Fosse was doing Dancing, Miss Margarita's Way with Estelle Parsons, just all these great plays that I would just sit and watch and learn. And then within 6 months, I got asked to do a soap opera. And I said, soap opera, no way, because this was in the 70s. And as you know, there was a great period of movies back then and great, actors and like who I was naming, and Scorsese and Coppola and Brian De Palma. And so that's what I would watch, because I never used to go to the movies.
So you were a snob. You were the soap opera. That's
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, because I saw Bob and all these other guys. I said, that's what I want to do.
But
and my dad, being a depression baby, he says, well, what are you kidding me? It's money. You've never... The logic was he was right on the money, that you're going to be in front of a camera. All you've been doing is plays. So at 22 years old, I said, oh, all right, I'll be in the soap opera. And I ended up doing for 3.5 years. And then I quit at 25 and moved to L.A. and nothing happened.
When did you get Family Honor? When did that happen, that TV show?
That was wow, you really know your stuff even without notes. Wow. It's very impressive. If I didn't get that job, I would have I had 5 years of savings for 25 to 30. And I remember my sister we were at Alice's restaurant at the pier in Malibu. And I was waiting to find out if I got Family Honor, because if I didn't, I would have had to have gotten just a regular job, because I was, living off of the soap money, because my dad's really good with handling money. So he kept me going. And that's when I got that. And then it was canceled. Yeah, but as soon as I moved out to L.A., I started studying with this guy, Harry Mastelgeorge, who, as far as I'm concerned, is the best teacher that's out there. And Stephen Bauer and Melanie Griffith turned me on to him, because Stephen, I knew him as Rocky.
Rocky Echeverria.
Yeah, he went to the U of M. So we did plays together, and when I came out, he said, you got to study with this guy, Harry. So I said, oh, all right. And I went, and he was great. It was the best thing that happened to me. But for 5 years, nothing happened. And then nothing. I did a couple guest shots. I did Casablanca. They did David,
TV show, David Soul.
David Soul, but it was a David Wolper production. He was Mr. Movie of the Week. I mean, he was huge back then. He did Roots. He did all these huge miniseries.
Right. And Casablanca was kind of a big deal, expensive TV show at the time.
And we shot in the soundstage.
On the Warner's lot?
On the Warner's lot, in the same soundstage with the actual bar stools and
so basically the same set decoration.
Exactly.
Wow.
From Casablanca, yeah.
We're going to take a break. My guest, who is a proud U of M alumnus and proud owner of a Pulse, is Ray Liotta. His new show is on NBC. It's Shades of Blue. It's the treatment. There's more to come.
Check out KCRW's all-news channel, News 24. Programming from KCRW, NPR, BBC, and more, 24 hours a day. Go to kcrw.com/news24 or listen on KCRW's app.
Select sessions from KCRW's music program Morning Becomes Eclectic can be experienced in the immersive world of virtual reality. Download KCRW's VR app and get lost in the music. Go to kcrw.com/VR.
Welcome back. It's The Treatment. I'm sitting across from Emmy winner and proud Miss Piggy dancing partner and proud owner of the Freddie, Ray Liotta, whose new show on NBC is Shades of Blue. But all these things you've been talking about in the first half of the show were all about this, you finding a way to use your physical presence. I mean, right down to having your acting teacher who had been a basketball player. So I'm sure he sort of taught you how to just live in the moment physically, didn't he?
I learned that more from Harry later on. As far as I'm concerned, the script gives you all the information you need. Now, it's good to do, like I played heart surgeons, and I used to go and watch open heart surgeries, and when I did Goodfellas, I hung out with these mafia guys that they wouldn't say that they were, but you knew just from the stories they were telling. And so the script informs kind of the physicality, too, because Henry Hill was a listener, and he kept his mouth shut. So talk about listening. That's the only way Henry got as far as he did and knew as much information as he did, is because he kept his mouth shut and just listened. So that informs your body language and how you're going to do things. The best compliment I ever got, and I think Scorsese's the one who told it to me, that Baryshnikov told him that the movement that I had and everything, and the way that the camera moved and everything, he said it was like a dance. He said the movements looked like the way everything just flowed from one scene to a next, and I'll never forget that.
Wow.
He told me that, and he said, don't drink schnapps, too much sugar.
A man who knows his hangovers, obviously. But one of the things I find that you do so often, too, we can look at Wozniak and Shades of Blue, is this is a guy who can get too close to people sometimes, and he's aware that...
No pun intended with that one.
Yes, well, a little bit of a pun, but also he's a character who understands when you step inside somebody's space, what that does to him. That other person. I just find that to be really interesting in watching the show.
Yeah, you can definitely get it. It's almost like a Seinfeld episode, the too close talker.
Yes, the close talker.
But it really is true that there's a certain space that people have, and if you cross into it, and sometimes it's a technique, because I did a lot of ride-alongs and hung out with cops early on, because I really believed I wanted to know as much as I could about like when I played the heart surgeon, I was like, what is it like for doctors to be doing a heart surgery? I went so much to watch the open heart surgeries that the doctor asked me if I wanted to scrub up and stand next to him while he was doing the operation. Now, this woman's chest is cracked open. And I said, now by then I was going like 2 or 3 weeks now I was going. I said, oh my gosh, I would love to, because the queasiness and everything had stopped, and I had already fainted once before, but that's a different story.
I'm sorry. No, it's not. You fainted?
Wait. Yeah. But not with this. And he came up and he looked at me and he said, do you want to touch her heart? I said, oh, what? Like, my God, it's like touching God. Like, yeah. And obviously she's on a bypass machine because the heart, the blood is being pumped through the system, because, the heart can't be moving, or else how you going to operate on it. Mm-hmm. And I went down and took my finger and touched this woman's heart. Blew my mind. It was unbelievable.
Wow. Tell me when you fainted. That's the one I want to hear.
I was going to acting class twice a week. The acting class was 6 hours a night. Usually was like 6 in the afternoon till 12. 7 o'clock the next morning, I had to be at Cedars-Sinai to go on rounds with these doctors. The doctor that I knew was the chief of surgery over at Cedars, but he specialized in liver transplants. And I hadn't eaten. I rushed over there. I went into this room with a like a first time that this woman was being watched over by a doctor, but she was in charge now that they're giving her some power. And what happens is there's a thing called the Williamsburg window, and it's a window that they leave open so they could test the liver to see if it's rejecting at all. So she had to get the fluid out of the liver, and she stuck the needle in this opening. The people they spoke no English. It was bright. The sun was just coming in. It was a white room. You could tell that the guy's wife was petrified. He was scared. He just, was waking up from a liver transplant. And she put the needle in the wrong place. She said, oops, she took it out. Opened up the needle, emptied the wrong fluid on this rag, and I said, whoa, I am not feeling good. Now, having never fainted before, I felt myself getting lightheaded. I said, let me step out. But obviously the first thing I should have done, and now I know, is just sit down. Well, I didn't think of sitting down. I walk out and boom, down. Out. I wake to the chief of surgery, and he's looking at me, and he's shaking his head saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got to call you a friend. I can't believe you just fainted over that. Out of all the things you could have fainted over, that's what you faint over? So, but yes, I did.
My guest who's giving me a new definition of the word Williamsburg is Ray Liotta. It's the treatment. His new work is the NBC series Shades of Blue. But if I can sort of change subject here for a minute, that idea of what distance does, if you get too close or you're too far away from people, and that's something you've understood for a long time too, isn't it? And again, for me with Wozniak, he's this guy who almost knows how to read a situation. If you stand too close to somebody, what that does to them, and he understands his power as well. And especially in a medium like television, which is so much about intimacy anyway, if you kind of violate what rules of intimacy are, then that really changes the way people act. And I just find that he's a guy who, obviously, he trades in information. He wants to know what's going on at all times, whatever way he has to do that, be it
anyway, right.
But he also operates on a lot of really subtle levels, which I find to be pretty interesting.
And some not so subtle.
Well, many not so subtle.
There's just information, and there's a fearlessness that he has, and he's been winning at the game of doing bad for so long, but all of a sudden the jig is up, and when they realize that there's a rat, that the FBI has been watching me for a while, and gets Jennifer. It's all well known that he gets Jennifer because she's the most vulnerable. She's the closest to me, and she's also the one who has the most information and the most to lose because she has a daughter. So they really have her, and I don't trust her. But talk about getting too close, or when she finally, when I pull a gun on her because I'm so crazed, and I say, all right, is it you or what? And she takes off her dress and takes down the top of her dress, and then it's just in a bra. Well, she's like a daughter to me. So that's where the physicality is too much, and it's one thing that I shouldn't have been shy about, but I was, because she's like a daughter to me, and I turn away from her because there she is. It's your daughter, like standing there in her bra, and it's like, well, no, I don't need to see this. Fine. Now, if I put two and two together, and I mean, there's always a fatal flaw. There's always something in the script that you're gonna have to make work. That if you really logically look at it, you'd say there's just no way. But that was one of them. My desire for finding out who the rat was, my discomfort and embarrassment in terms of how I behaved with her, was a lot stronger than my finding out if it was her or not. Because deep down, I don't want to believe it's her anyhow. So when she's, so that's how the physicality works in a reverse way, where she's showing, no pun intended, but she's showing too much, she's so.
And we should say it's a show where your cops and your pretty corrupt units pretty kind of operated without fiat for a long time, and then the FBI basically sort of drops the bomb on Jennifer, who's part of the unit. They're using her to get to you. And I think what's interesting about this show, too, you talked about before we got started about being literary by doing TV. It's, you're working with Barry Levinson here. So
well, for that right there, who I heard is going to come on now and executive produce all.
For the next season, he's doing
everything, every show for the next season.
Wow!
But there was that. I didn't know Jennifer's work, so that was a question mark, and that was there's nothing more than I just didn't know. The fact that I'm bisexual in it, or I'm married, and also when I read that in the script, that all of a sudden it's like, whoa! I thought I knew what was happening and what they were talking about.
Wow!
This is now a whole other layer here that I did not see coming, that I just found really interesting. That this is, and the way I described it to them is, I don't want like everybody thinking every minute that if I'm talking to a guy, like that's what it's leading to. It's just more, and I don't know, maybe you've met just somebody with huge appetites for everything. So there is no line to cross, because there is no line. If this is what I want to do this day, this is what I'm doing this day. If I want to drink too much, I'm going to drink too much. If I'm going to drug too much, I'm going to drug too much. If I'm going to kiss a guy, I'm going to kiss a guy. If I want to be in an orgy, I'll be in an orgy. It's just a very, very different kind of character that you do not see on television.
But also,
not even cable.
No, I think that not only that, but here's a guy who basically is kind of open about the fact that he's using people. Usually people are they kind of hide a little bit. He sort of, everybody knows that he's into them or talking to them because he wants something out of them, that kind of unapologetic aspect to him is also something I find kind of unusual too.
Yeah, I mean, he's a cop's cop. There was a whole thing, especially this past year, in terms of the way Bloomberg's department ran, and now how Bratton is doing it now, and there was the
search law.
The
random search.
Right, and
stop and frisk.
But now they say that crime and murder has gone up without that.
Well,
then the other side says, well, what about the civil liberties of people too? But it depends on which side you want to lay on and how safe do you want your city to be. I mean, obviously there's lines to be crossed, and enough becomes enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be interesting too, especially playing cop in New York, given what's been happening in New York.
Yeah, exactly. Days. Exactly. With all those elements, but from the cop side of things, see, a cop just wants to, one of the last things they'll say after a meeting is, be safe out there. Come back in one piece. It's almost better them than you. Get home to your family. And that's where people cross the lines. Not everybody realizes. And there's no ifs, ands, or I don't know these cases per se in terms of exactly what happened, but the line has definitely been crossed a lot of times. Cops crossing the line and injuring or killing somebody else. I'm sure there's just as many cases where it wasn't as obvious, and maybe someone's life was threatened and it was, us than them. There's a family. These people, that's their job. It's what they happen to do, but it's an extremely dangerous job. And there's a really fine line. And I don't, I'm sure some are out and out murders, where others were, it's judgment calls.
Let me ask you this as the last question, Ray. I just wonder, how important is it to you to like a character that you're playing?
I don't have to at all.
No?
No, I once played a character who was a racist, and I hated it. I hated it.
And you were playing a cop in that case, too.
I was, yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
I do, yeah.
Unlawful entry. I hated it. It is a reflection of the times and of people, but me, myself, personally, it's just not who I am at all. So it was really disturbing to me.
Wow, well, you got to come back and do the show again. It's really a pleasure having you do this. Thank you
I'd
so
love
much.
To. Yeah.
My guest is Ray Liotta. He's starring as the very interesting guy in the new NBC show, Shades of Blue. Our recording engineer here at NPR West is Peter Stencil. The show is mixed by Kat Yor. It's edited by Blake Veit, who's associate producer. I'm Elvis Mitchell. It's The Treatment. To catch up on past episodes of The Treatment, go to KCRW.com or listen on your smartphone with KCRW's mobile apps, or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The treatment is produced and distributed by KCRW Santa Monica.